welcome to the Beyond Cinema studio, Mr. David Hamilton. Congratulations on this kind of epic relationship between yourself and Deepa Mehta. It's about 20 years now,
yes,
from what I've read.
1995.
1995. So what was that?
Actually, we started working on the script in 94, but we shot the film in 95, so it's 20 years. Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah. And that was Fire.
That
was the first of the Elemental trilogy. Yeah.
And so what was it about that first meeting, and where was it? Where were you both? Were you sitting down somewhere? Was it a phone call? What was
Oh, no, it was a series of meetings, because I had resisted for a long time, because Deep and I were in a relationship at that time, and nobody would produce. She had tried other people to gain the interest in producing the film, but she couldn't find anyone. And so she kept on asking me to do it, because I had never produced a film, but I had done similar things. I'd done stage plays, and I'd done music, concerts. So I knew, I knew what the elements were. I may not have known all the technical details. And so I told her, I said, this could have a very adverse effect on our relationship if I do this. She said, no, it won't. I promise you. So finally I relented, and of course I was right. It did have an adverse impact. But over the years we worked out some rules of engagement that enable us to work smoothly together. And now it's actually, making a film is never easy, but the working relationship is very easy.
And what, titling the first one being called Fire probably didn't help from an elemental level.
Yeah, that's a hard one to start with.
Yeah, perhaps it started with water.
Maybe it made the other ones easier.
That's
I don't
right.
know. But.
It's a pretty amazing thing. There are these kind of enduring relationships in film and in the arts generally, where there's someone who takes a belief of one sort of person, or the commitment of one sort of person to...
this has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, the patronage
this kind of
the
collaboration,
arts. But in modern times, there's often so much pressure on those relationships financially, and given the way the industry keeps changing, that it really does test the mettle of the ability of those relationships to continue to exist, especially on an independent level. Obviously the industry's changed a lot since you've started working together till now. Has that forced the expectations on the films to be different? Has that forced the art and craft to be different? Or have you found that you've managed to maintain a fairly high resistance to that?
I think that pressure is actually the fact that we're in this collaboration and have been for many years. I think has helped a lot, because Deepa has much deeper understanding of my problems. Right? So it's not a question of an artist wanting everything and then ranting and raging when they don't get it, because that's the traditional view of the artist. We can actually, not that she isn't passionate and emotional about what she wants, she is definitely, but we can actually sit down and I say, you can have that, but you probably can't have this then. And so there are trade-offs to all these things, and she recognizes those trade-offs, and she's very good at making quick decisions about what's more important, and so that makes it easier. And also the way that we deal with the passion, because anytime I say, that's going to be difficult, she doesn't want to hear that. And so one of our rules of engagement is I can say anything I want, but she can't respond for 24 hours. I won't listen to any response for 24 hours, because I know that when she actually thinks about it, she will be able to make a reasoned decision about what's more important. Yeah.
So when someone says to you, I want to make a film about the Indo-Canadian mafia gangster community in Vancouver, how many hours need to transpire before that becomes a reality?
I resisted it, for the first while. It took me quite a while to embrace the notion of doing this film. And I think it was through the process of doing the script, because we agreed we'd at least get through that and then take another look at it and decide whether we're going to go further. And as the script evolved, I realized that we're not just talking about gangsters. We're also talking about a real situation in our society. We did a lot of research on what's going on in Vancouver, and one of the things that fascinated me about it is there is so much information available in BC, but it never gets over the Rockies. For some reason or other, you tell people here, huge gang activity in the Indo community in Vancouver. What? Really? And it's been going on for 20 years. And it's violent. I mean, there are 100 of them that have died in the last maybe 6-7 years alone.
Yeah.
They're killing each other constantly. And very seldom do any of these gangsters live beyond their 20s. Hardly any of them. We met during our research a former gangster, somebody who had reformed himself in prison. He'd gone to prison. And he's now a lawyer, went to Osgood Law School. They won't allow him to practice criminal law, but he's an immigration lawyer. And he was able to tell us, he knew all these guys. And he said what saved him was going to prison. Because he said, if I hadn't gone to prison, I'd be dead now. All of my friends are dead.
You took a 180 of that in terms of your own career transition path from something that people think of as being fairly stable, right? And having an MBA and studying math and all this sort of stuff, and then became more reckless and became a film producer.
I think I've always been a little reckless, I think. I've always tended more to the entrepreneurial than the corporate world. In fact, I don't think I've ever worked for anyone. I've had a lot of jobs, but it's always been as kind of an independent contract worker, and I've run fairly substantial companies, but kind of as a co-owner. So I'm used to that. Taking a risk is something in my nature, I guess, because I find it exciting, and I can actually close my eyes and say, we're going to do this, and put aside all of that conversation that's going on in your head and saying, don't be crazy about,
Because
and you have to, you meet most of the people in this industry have that, that same...
An attraction to it.
That the attraction to it, and the ability to put blinders on. So your logical part of your mind isn't speaking too loudly, because any real sensible person would not do this.
And with your work as a producer then, it's taken you to different parts of the globe. Is there some place that still holds a magical allure for you in terms of having produced film there?
I think it's places that I haven't been that hold the magical character for me, because I think this is also something all of us have, is that whole thing about what's over the next hill. Okay, we got this far. I wonder what, and of course what's over the next hill is the same thing that you just went through, but somehow you can't help yourself but to go over there. So I don't think it's so much a matter of going back to places that I've been. It's more, right now I have this idea about Patagonia. I don't know why, but it keeps coming up in my mind.
Yeah.
And, through strange circumstances, I meet people from Patagonia, or I see an article and I'm thinking, there's something drawing me there. So the next time we speak,
Yeah.
let's see if something happened, something magical happened.
Yeah, that would be great if we found some strange kind of fish out of water community in the Andes or down in Patagonia somewhere.
Yeah.
Speaking of Patagonia, you filmed a lot of Beeba in Brampton and places around Toronto.
Which is kind of like Patagonia.
Yeah. It was
Without the mountains.
It was a very forced segue.
Yeah.
Actually, I read that. Someone tweeted something about that. They were talking about gangsters in Brampton. Does anyone have a ticket for this film? And then someone's like, oh, it's set in Vancouver. But that's just Surrey with mountains. Is what I said. I don't know what Surrey means, but I imagine that that's kind of what we're talking about right now.
Well, Surrey is a suburb of
Right, no,
Vancouver,
I
right? So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we shot in Brampton is because there are areas of Brampton that look very much like Surrey.
Yeah.
In fact, you wouldn't know, unless if you really had somebody who understood foliage. If you've got somebody in the audience who happens to be a biologist or something, sure, they can pinpoint, oh, then wait a minute, those trees don't grow in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we shot one shot in a very large mansion in Brampton, which is owned by one of the drug lords. And it was perfect. In fact, we did a lot of location scouting in Vancouver, and then we also duplicated every location we duplicated in Toronto. And in many cases, we found better locations for what we had in mind in Brampton than we did in Vancouver. So, in a way, more authentic.
Yeah.
At least more authentic to
the vision.
Yeah, to the vision that we had. And so that's one of the reasons we did a lot of the shooting here.
What was another primary reason why you wanted to keep it?
Well, one of the reasons is it's an Ontario production. So if you want to get the Ontario tax credits, other than the production services tax credit, then you have to. Sorry, we should have mentioned that.
Andy.
Please turn off your phones. So, I mean, there is another way of doing it, and that is to have a co-production with a producer in BC. But I mean, in a way, these rules are arcane for one country. You think, well, this is a country, but we do have provinces, and they're funded separately, and they have separate governments. So they obviously want to protect the industry within their boundaries. So that's the other reason we did, and their regulations are pretty restrictive. You can only shoot, if it's an Ontario production, you can only shoot 15% of the film in another province. So for a 35-day shoot, that's only 5 days. So we had to get all of the exteriors. I mean, most of the exterior shots are done in Vancouver because, of course, you've got to get that vista. You've got to get the ocean. You've got to get the mountains into this film. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like Vancouver. So.
Yeah.
But all of the interiors, practically all of the interiors were done here, or in or around Toronto, and 5 of them were done in Brampton. There was a swimming pool scene, a golf course. Now, golf course is exterior, but once you're on a golf course, it's hard to tell which golf course you're on.
Yeah.
And we did a nail salon and a tattoo parlor, and they all turned out very, very well.
At what point do you think it became like a massive factor? The incentive game became a massive factor because it wasn't always the way, right? Was it here?
Oh, it's always been that way.
So it's always been.
We've always been highly. We don't have a studio system here, so we've always been highly dependent on the support of various levels of government and tax credits and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have a film industry.
Yeah. What do you think? I kind of always like that experience, the Oscar experience, and what it means. And obviously, when Water was nominated for an Academy Award,
that was a very exciting moment.
Do you remember where you were?
Yes, of course, because they don't tell you, right?
Right.
You watch it on TV just like everybody else. That's when it's announced, and you're standing there with your collaborators and watching it on TV. And they announced them in alphabetical order. And we obviously had been looking at, okay, what films are we, because they narrow it down to 9 first.
Yeah, the short list.
So we know we're one of 9, and then they narrow it down to the last 5. And we knew that Almodovar's film was one of the favorites. It's called Volver. It starts with V, right?
Right.
And
With Penelope
they had
Cruz.
announced the first four. We're W, right? So we're going to be last, no matter how it turns out. And so they'd already announced the 4, and Volver wasn't one of them. So we thought, okay, we've lost, because Volver is definitely in, right? And then they said us. There was a lot of tears.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? That
Yeah.
Filmmakers, they pursue their craft in a way that's dogged and almost to the point where it's like, well, we don't need the either the vindication or the external forces in order to have our internal force to make these movies and make them happen. But that acknowledgement of peers that the Academy signifies is still such a marquee moment for people, and really can have such significant meaning, even for people whose work has significant meaning.
There's no question about it. And what's amazing is when you actually go to the Academy Awards, it's like you've been going every year. You're in the club. You're welcomed. You know, it's like, and the people you've admired that have been there for years and years, who live in LA and stuff, it's like you're one of them. They greet you like that. You know, it's quite astounding. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's been a pleasure having you pop by here for a brief chat. I'd say that, you know, the spectacles maketh the man in Hollywood, so I'm sure that had a
You
huge,
think I've done a good job with
I
the
think you've
spectacles?
done a great job
Yeah.
with that pair of glasses.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, things are going well for Beeba Boys. So
Yeah.
I just saw on Craigslist that people are selling the tickets for the gala for $200 a piece. So that's a good sign. I think I'll wait until they get to 2,000.
Yeah, you can probably sneak in a different door, get some money back on that production. Very cool. Well, more money to spend on marketing, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, great to meet you, David.
Nice meeting
Thanks
you.
again for being
Bye.
here.